Looking back, he seemed to have spent most of his time stumbling from one crisis to another, acted upon as often as acting from his own plans and wishes. There had been schemes and conspiracies all around him, most of which he knew only by the brief shadows they cast across his life in passing, and in the end it seemed to him that for all his intentions and bold companions, and the mysterious powers he'd acquired from the madness maze, he had finally come to stand defiantly before the Iron Throne through his own sheer stubbornness, and a refusal to be beaten by odds that would have frightened off a more sensible man. He'd ended up a hero and a saviour of humanity, and no one had been more surprised than him. He'd expected to fail, expected to die, and die horribly. Instead, he'd overthrown an empire that had lasted well over a millennium, deposed its ruler and destroyed her throne, and seen the end of practically every social and political structure he believed in. And that was when the problems had really begun. Lionstone's body was barely cold before the vultures began descending. Even while the last battles were being fought, the various parts of the rebel force had begun arguing fiercely with each other over what exactly should replace the old system. Even those few who'd been there at the end couldn't bring themselves to agree. Owen had wanted things to stay much as they were, with some political reforms and injustices punished. Hazel had wanted it all torn down, with war trials for all the families for crimes against humanity. Jack Random insisted on democracy for all, including all clones and espers and other unpeople. Ruby Journey wanted the loot she'd been promised. They were soon joined in the court by representatives of the clone and esper undergrounds, fringe political groups of all shapes and shades, and more religious factions than you could shake a stick at, all of them intent on having their own way. Luckily, they were all too tired to start another war just yet. The argument became a deadlock, and everyone stamped off in different directions to plot and plan anew. For the moment, Parliament was running the day-to-day business of empire on the grounds that somebody had to, and they at least had some experience in the area. No one trusted them an inch, but there was nothing new there. Men and women who had once been allies, sworn to defend each other to the death and beyond, now fought each other viciously over points of dogma and precedence. Owen supposed he shouldn't have been surprised. He was a historian after all. All the various rebel factions had ever really had in common was a shared enemy, and though they all bandied around words like justice and liberty, they meant very different things to different people. And then there was the deal Random had made, in the midst of the most desperate fighting, to depose but not destroy the aristocratic families. Faced with an increasingly victorious army calling for their collective blood, the great houses had banded together and offered to step down from power and privilege in return for being allowed to survive as purely economic forces. That was the carrot. The stick was their threat to destroy the economic base of the whole empire and crash every civilized world back to barbarism. No one doubted they were quite capable of doing it, and so Random had made the deal to save the lives of billions. But no one thanked him for it. The man in the street was cheated of his revenge. The rebels accused their beloved hero of selling out his political convictions, and the families hated him for the loss of their precious nobility. Afterward, Random had to hire a secretary just to deal with all the hate mail and death threats. As if the situation wasn't complicated enough, Blue Block had emerged from the shadows to unite and control the families and scare the crap out of everyone else. Blue Block had been the family's secret weapon, a last-ditch defense to be used against the Empress if she ever seriously threatened the clan's power and status. The youngest sons and daughters of each house were given to Blue Block, trained and conditioned to be loyal to the families to the death and beyond. Unfortunately, Blue Block turned out to have an agenda of its own.